and Fox 23 will begin shortly. Your live interactive coverage with CBS 13 and Fox 23 starts right now.
All right, and there we go. Hello, I'm Greg Lagerquist from CBS 13 and Fox 23, and I'm joined by the political editor from our news partners at the Bangor Daily News, Michael Shepard. Mike, great to see you again.
Yeah, good evening, Greg.
All right, so here's the ground rule, folks. We are going to have a quick conversation tonight about a story that really has been getting a lot of traction this week. I know it has been on the BDN, it has been on our social media as well. It's the whole idea, and this has been out there for a while, but that Social Security is at risk of running out of money. At least the trust fund that funds most of it, or a big part of it, is going to run out of money. Obviously, there'll still be payroll taxes and money coming in, but in roughly 11 years, unless something is done, Social Security as we know it is going to essentially go broke. It will run out of money. And Mike, you picked up on something this week, and I'll credit you. There was a little blurb in Washington talking about how there are conversations about what to do about this, including Senator Angus King. Why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting issue, right? Because Social Security plays such a big role in Maine, where we're the oldest state in the nation by median age. We are politicians generally. Every campaign that Greg and I cover here, where politicians are falling over each other, right, to talk about how they want to preserve Medicare and Social Security for those people. So it affects all of us in one way or another, or our parents, or other loved ones. So it's a far-reaching issue. And this week, Senator Angus King has been part of a sort of a small working group of senators since it kind of broke in January, but there have been sort of specific leaks coming out of those discussions. The one that kind of caught everyone's eye was a part of this sort of REMA proposals that would raise the retirement age of Social Security from 67 to 70. Now, these are just talks, right? There's no concrete proposal. There could be other things within their suite of proposals that balance that out, or change other things in other ways. But that was the one that really got a lot of attention, because it's kind of a red line that Maine politicians haven't crossed in the past. Even Susan Collins opposes this actually from the left, to say, we shouldn't do this. It would be hard for Mainers who work with their hands in particular. So you get this really interesting division between a senator who's usually, quite low key, right, and Angus King, sort of stepping out in a way that other Maine politicians don't always.
Yeah, and again, I know that I've had a conversation with Senator King's staff today. I know you've been in conversations with them as we always do when we're putting stuff out there. We seek information from sources, and they're at pains to make the point you just did, Mike, which is that there's not a plan, there's not a draft, there's not a bill. These are ideas, and obviously, I think Senator King and other senators, anyone who's it's almost the third rail of politics, as we're discovering right now. If you touch this, people are going to be angry. And I know you have a poll up right now that we're seeing right now on your website. This is the Bangor Daily News website, by the way, that we're sort of looking at over on the side here and talking about the article that Mike wrote. And you've got a poll up. We had a poll up as well yesterday. Let's start with yours. I'm not going to click on it because I'd have to click yes or no to see more. And I don't want to, put a vote in there just now. What have you seen from people? How have they been reacting to the idea?
Yeah, I mean, our poll is not scientific, but it's 78% of our poll says no right now. So, take that for what it's worth, which is very little.
Pretty on par with what we saw too. Anecdotal, but
yeah. I mean, so I think that there's a reason why Maine politicians haven't often touched this issue, but I think it's worth pointing out. I mean, and as you did off the top, Greg, that this is an example of a long-term problem that Congress is kicking and has kicked down the road. Social Security is not in a great long-term place. Mm-hmm. Now, politicians are going to either have to fund it or rein it in, or do a bunch of things maybe that they don't want to do. And I think you're seeing the awkwardness and maybe the necessary compromises in this deal that Angus King and this Republican senator, who's the departing Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, are working out.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And I pulled up our Facebook page, and you can kind of see over here on the side, I can't blow it up, but I'm kind of circling it. A lot of little angry face emojis coming in from people when it comes to the idea. We have like a couple hundred comments from people basically, and the gist is, just to read one here. Nancy saying absolutely not. It should, in fact, she says that you should lower the retirement age, in her opinion, eliminating the earnings cap, which is currently set at $160,000 or so, and most of the problems would be solved. End quote. That's her comment.
And we should discuss that too. I mean, that is
right.
That's kind of the typical Democratic answer on Social Security, basically. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know this, that there is a cap basically on what Social Security will tax. So if you make above $160,000, that first $160,000 is taxed the way the rest of our income is on Social Security, but the money above that is not. So the typical Democratic argument here is, well, let's tax those high earners and fund the system. Right. On the Republican side, we've heard a lot over the years about raising the retirement age, or sort of culling back benefits for earners in the future. I mean, I've covered I don't know how many campaigns with Bruce Pollock when in the second district, saying we should consider changes for future beneficiaries, but not for people currently in the program. That's a way of saying to Maine voters, I'm not going to cut your benefits, but we need to make future changes going forward.
And we have some comments already coming in. Thank you, everybody who's participating and sort of watching us right now. A couple of the comments are pretty uniform here too, Mike. Mary Ann saying the government should stop borrowing money from the Social Security. The trust fund, we might not have this problem. Others say, absolutely not. Well, actually, here's one literally saying absolutely not. This is Sharon saying that. And here's another sample. Katie saying, tell them put back the trillions they've taken out. I mean, that's the truth. Actually, the Social Security Trust Fund has not stayed just for Social Security. They've actually borrowed against it. The federal government has borrowed off of that for years to sort of fund things. And that's one of the reasons why there's not a lot of money and why it's going to run out of money before, when in roughly a decade from now. And I'll appreciate this comment. This is from Justin. You don't need a scientific poll on this boy genius. It is unpopular. I hope he's not calling us the boy genius. Anyway, I think he's referring to the senator there.
You may be referring to me. That's okay.
He chimed in as well, saying they should pay back the money to the trust fund with interest. So again, it's honestly pretty uniform what people are saying, and it makes sense. I mean, people feel like, look, I've paid into Social Security. Polls suggest that people who are younger than like 30 and under, or even older than that, are really skeptical about whether this money is going to be there for them. They actually don't. The polls are pretty clear that people say, yeah, I don't trust Washington to keep this money in there and make sure I can have, my share that I paid into when it's time for me to retire. Yep. Mike, we should also make the point. The idea of raising the age to get full, by the way, you can still retire. Like right now, you can still retire at 62 and collect some retirement benefits. Right. But to get the full benefits, it used to be 65. I know my age group is now 67. I think it's going up as well from there. So we should mention it's been raised before. In fact, Tip O'Neill, the very liberal, Speaker of the House from Massachusetts, was part of a deal back in, I think it was the 90s. Was it 90s or even late 80s?
I think this is the Reagan era, actually.
The Reagan era. Yeah, it was the 80s. It was right. Reagan and Tip O'Neill, they cut a deal to sort of gradually raise the retirement age. And the reason was because they saw the same thing. Social Security was great when they created it in the 30s and 40s with the idea that, frankly, people retire at 65. The average person then didn't live a whole lot longer past 65. And there were a lot of young people who were working. And then, of course, after World War II, we had a lot of baby boomers after, 20 years after that, started entering the workforce. When you have a lot of people working for a relatively small number of people retired, taking money out of the system, that's relatively sustainable. It's not sustainable when you have a smaller number of people working compared to retirees, and those retirees are living longer, which is what we've been seeing more and more. It's great that people are living longer. We want that. It does create a problem for Social Security, though, doesn't it, Mike?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. And we've seen this in Maine, right? We're coming to a point, 2020 through the 2020s and 2030s, where the baby boomer generation is aging out of the workforce, and it's going to create a lot of churn, right? It seems like a lot of the big sort of the big players in business and politics are sort of getting out of the game, right? And it's you see it, all the way down the workforce. Matt Ironworks struggling with that. I mean, you see this at a lot of diverse employers, and this is the baby boomer generation coming out and coming to the end of their work life. That's going to be that's a huge generation of people, and we're getting to the end there.
Yeah. And it's, we're just sort of seeing in the comments right now, obviously there's a lot of people who are just not happy with this whole, even having the conversation. I will say, and this is a point that, and I'll mention it now because it's part of the conversation I had today with Senator King's staff, saying that, look, it's irresponsible not to talk about something. If no one wants to touch the conversation around Social Security, then clearly nothing's going to get fixed in the next 10 years. And then we'll be in even a bigger crisis. So they're trying to make the point that, look, we haven't figured out, we don't know exactly what we want to do, but we got to talk about it and we got to have these conversations. But I happen to know also from that conversation that Senator King's staff acknowledges they've been getting a lot of angry feedback this week from constituents from right here in Maine and presumably beyond Maine who don't like this idea at all.
Yeah, and this isn't normal territory for Angus King, right? He's not the main senator, right? Who's usually in the middle of all the deals. That's Senator Susan Collins. This is an issue that he's decided to kind of step out on, and I know this is kind of at the test balloon stage, but I was told today to expect some sort of legislative proposal in a month or two. I mean, that's not nothing, right? In the glacial world of Congress. So we're not as far away as you might think on this. And some of these, and let's be honest too, for somebody to get through a divided Congress under President Joe Biden right now, there's going to have to be a lot of trading to get to a deal that has any prayer of succeeding and actually solving this problem in the long term. And everyone agrees there's a problem. It's gonna be how the parties can come together, at least in this environment, and fix it.
And so I'll just sample a couple more just because, again, it's respectful, but there's certainly some anger here. Amelia saying, let the 1%ers pay their full. So she's obviously, sounding what the Democrats are obviously advocating. In this case, Kim just frankly angry, all caps, no, stop trying to steal our money. Kelly saying, no, this wouldn't be a problem if they'd leave the Social Security money alone. Mark chiming in saying, and this is to, a thread that we've seen some folks talk about as well. Obviously, all these, hundreds of millions of dollars going into Ukraine. Are they going to pay back into SSA when they're back on their feet? Clearly they won't, but he's, you see the point he's trying to make there. So there's a lot of, I'll click this one too, just to bring it up there. Justin, actually, we got one of Justin's comments earlier. He's saying blue collar trades are hard on the body and should not go up. I mean, that's an interesting point. Asking people who work with their hands and their bodies for a living to push back their full retirement age from 65 to 67 to maybe 70, that maybe looks different than asking a white collar worker, an office worker. I'm a desk jockey. I fully admit that. I don't work with my hands other than to shovel the driveway today, things like that. So that's a different question. For somebody who's a welder at BIW, for example, to ask them to work longer years, that's a different ask than somebody who's, working frankly behind a desk.
No, absolutely. I mean, it does feel like there could be different rules for different people, and when Social Security was implemented, it wasn't the work world wasn't really like that, right. And I think there's even Susan Collins made that point, and let's see what they come out with, right? I think there could be some trading on occupations or things like that. It's probably frankly necessary in this work world where some of us work with our hands and some of us type for a living. It's a difficult answer.
Caleb jumps in. He's one of the few voices saying maybe I think we should change in reference to the retirement age. People live longer, and that's a fact. That's a difficult truth when it comes to these kinds of issues. So a lot of strong, and this is sort of jiving with what we saw on your some of the online comments to your story, Mike, that you did earlier this week, the story that we did based on your story, and some of the polls that we put up there. Pretty consistent. The minority is saying, yeah, we got to talk about this, and maybe it's not a terrible idea, but the majority is saying it is a terrible idea. Don't do this. We can't afford this. So appreciate it. Hey, we've had some really great conversation. I mean, obviously some strong feelings in here. But great to hear from people. Oh, this isn't clicking for some reason. What am I doing wrong? Anyway, this is what happens when you put me in charge of clicking on things. So yeah, great. I really appreciated everyone talking. And Mike, I really appreciated your story too. I thought that was an interesting issue. And I think you made the point too, and I want to maybe circle back to that. From what you're hearing, yes, there's not a plan. Yes, there's not a bill, but there's something, again, the idea isn't to push this down the road another 1, 2, 5 years. That there may be something.
I think we lost Greg, but yeah, he's right. I mean, I think there is a desire here on the part of Senator King and this group of senators to actually get something done, and we don't know what that proposal is going to be like. But we think that in a month or two, right, we'll have something to look at. So just finishing the point, Greg, that I think there's a serious desire for them to actually come out with something, and whether it's a bill that will pass, I think that's going to be hard. I think passing any bill is going to be hard in this Congress, but at least we'll see a pathway to what they think is something that could fix this problem in the long term.
And I don't know, it's because we have a lot of people who are joining us, but I got booted out of my own live stream there for a minute.
It was a scary moment.
I could tell you kept talking while I was gone for that 10 seconds or so. So thank you. I will click this comment too. Bob's saying they already raised it, and he has an AOC avatar there. Time to remove the tax ceiling and lower the age. So he's actually saying, get rid of that wage cap for the payroll taxes and to lower the full retirement age. That's one opinion we've been seeing as well. So thanks everybody for participating and jumping in here. I do want to encourage everybody, you can learn a lot more about what we've been talking about here and read these stories. Mike obviously did a really great story. I think yesterday's edition of the BDN on this issue. You can go to their website right now. You can read it. You can go to our website right now, read what's going on there too, participate. Final thoughts, Mike. Obviously this is an issue we plan to keep following. I imagine it's an issue you plan to keep following.
Yeah, it's a massive policy issue, number one, and one of the most important issues for our viewers and our readers. I think what's also interesting here too, Greg, and we didn't touch on the political implications of this, but you have Angus King here, 78 years old, right? A very a popular former governor. He's thinking of running for another term. He said it back in December that we thought after 2018 that might be his last campaign, but he seems that all systems go for 2024, which is an interesting wrinkle to all this, right? And it's he's sticking his neck out on a tough issue, frankly, and weathering some criticism. This isn't a place that we normally have Angus King in, right? Particularly dealing with some criticism from the left. So it's a really interesting time and a really interesting issue for him.
I agree. And obviously he's, we got a couple of years here before he's running for re-election, or I should say, actually, I guess we got a couple of years. Short answer. Not even though. It's, if you do the math, it's coming up fast. In fact, he probably have to declare soon, as we're already seeing, the race for the White House for 2024 is already sort of picking up steam. So
yeah, no, it's closer than you think, and that's going to really be it on our ballot that year, except for obviously the congressional races. There's no gubernatorial, so he's going to be the big guy on the ticket.
Top of the main ticket, absolutely. All right, well, thank you everybody, appreciate it, and Mike, as always, I really appreciate your time. And again, you can continue to read more, participate more, go to our social media channels, go to the BangorDailyNews.com, go to WGME.com. Stay involved, stay up to date. We love to bring you information about this, and we love to have these conversations, even if it's a, kind of a tough topic and not an easy one, and certainly one that riles people up at times. But thank you so much, and Mike, thanks so much. And I guess that is it for us for now. Have a wonderful night, everybody, and we'll catch you back here. If I can figure out where to click here, we'll catch you back here later. Have a great night, everybody.
Take care.
You've been watching live interactive coverage from CBS 13 and Fox 23. Make sure to stay connected with CBS 13 and Fox 23 on air, online, and through these social channels. Thank you for watching.